Grandpa gave me $100,000 at 18 for college, but my parents demanded I hand it to my sister the next day. Some background. I just turned 18 and graduated high school with pretty good grades. I've always been close with my grandpa. He's the kind of guy who taught me how to fish, helped me with my science projects, and always had time to listen when I was having a tough day. My parents, on the other hand, well, they've always favored my sister. She's 16, 2 years younger than me, and somehow everything has always been about her. Her dance recitals, her grades, which aren't even that great, her friends, her problems. I learned pretty early on that I needed to be self-sufficient. Anyway, the day after graduation, my grandpa invited me over for lunch. He seemed really excited about something but wouldn't tell me what it was. When I got there, he handed me an envelope with the biggest smile on his face. "Open it," he said, practically bouncing in his chair. I did, and inside was a check for $100,000. I'm not kidding, $100,000, with my name on it. I just stared at it, completely speechless. "That's for your college education," Grandpa explained, his eyes getting a little misty. "I've been saving it up for years. Your grandma and I always believed in the power of education, and we wanted to make sure you wouldn't have to struggle with debt like so many young people today." He also handed me a letter he'd written, talking about how proud he was of me, how he wanted this money to help me focus on my studies instead of working multiple jobs, and how he knew I'd use it responsibly. I was so overwhelmed I actually started crying. "Thank you," I kept saying over and over. "I don't even know what to say." "Just promise me you'll use it wisely," he said. "Get that degree. Make something of yourself." I promised him I would. We had lunch, talking about which colleges I was considering and what I might study. I left his house feeling like I was walking on air. For the first time, my future seemed secure. I could go to a good school, maybe even live on campus, and not graduate with crushing debt. It was the best gift anyone had ever given me. When I got home, I told my parents the news, expecting them to be happy for me. My mom smiled and said, "That's nice, honey," but there was something off about it. My dad just nodded and changed the subject. Still, I was too excited to really notice. That night, I researched different bank accounts and started looking into how to best manage such a large sum. I wanted to show Grandpa I was taking his gift seriously. The next day, everything changed. I came downstairs for breakfast and found both my parents sitting at the kitchen table, looking serious. My sister was there too, which was unusual since she normally slept in during summer break. "Sit down," my dad said, pointing to the empty chair. "We need to talk." I sat, feeling a weird knot forming in my stomach. "About the money your grandpa gave you?" my mom started, her voice oddly calm. "We've been thinking, and we believe you should give it to your sister." I thought I'd misheard. "What? Your sister needs that money more than you do," my dad said firmly. "She's got real potential. She wants to attend dance camp this summer, and there's a private art school she's interested in. Plus, she'll need a car soon." I looked at my sister, who was smirking slightly. "But, Grandpa gave it to me," I said, still not fully processing what was happening. "For college. He specifically said it was for my education." "Well, your grandpa doesn't always make the best decisions," my mom said dismissively. "He probably didn't think it through." "I've been accepted to 3 colleges, I argued, feeling my chest tighten. "I need this money." "You can go to community college," my dad said with a wave of his hand, "or get loans like most kids. Your sister has special talents that need nurturing." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The money wasn't just for whatever. It was specifically for my education. I'd promised Grandpa. "No," I said, surprising even myself with how firm I sounded. "This is my money. Grandpa gave it to me for college." My parents exchanged looks, like they hadn't expected resistance. "We're not asking," my dad said, his voice hardening. "We're telling you. You will transfer that money to your sister." "That's not fair," I said, my voice rising. "I've worked hard for years. I've got scholarships, but they don't cover everything. This money is for my future." "Life isn't fair," my mom said coldly. "Your sister needs this opportunity more than you do." "Don't be selfish," my sister chimed in. "Yeah, don't be so selfish. It's just money. You can get a job or whatever." I stormed out of the kitchen, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. The amazing gift that was supposed to secure my future was being ripped away from me, and by my own family no less. In my room, I reread Grandpa's letter, tears blurring my vision. The check was still in the envelope. I hadn't deposited it yet, which I now realized was lucky, but I knew my parents wouldn't let this go. I spent the rest of the day avoiding my family, trying to think. I needed advice, but I didn't want to tell Grandpa and potentially cause problems between him and my parents. Instead, I called my best friend and explained the situation. "That's messed up," she said. "You need to protect that money. Like, now." She was right. I needed to act fast. The next morning, I told my parents I was meeting a friend for breakfast, but instead went straight to the bank. The teller seemed a bit surprised when I handed over the $100,000 check, but she processed it professionally. "I'd like to open a new account," I explained. "One that's only in my name." "Of course," she said. "Since you're 18, you can open an independent account. No parent or guardian needs to be on it." I felt a wave of relief. At least the money was legally mine. "Actually," I said, thinking quickly, "is there a way to make sure this money can only be used for educational expenses? I'm worried I might be, pressured to use it for other things." The teller called over a manager, who sat down with me and explained several options. We settled on a special type of account that would have some restrictions on withdrawals, and would require documentation of educational expenses. It wasn't quite as locked down as a formal trust, but it was the best we could do on short notice. As I left the bank, I felt a mix of emotions. Relief that the money was secure, but anxiety about facing my parents. I knew they'd be furious, but I kept reminding myself that this was what Grandpa wanted. This was my future. When I got home, my mom immediately confronted me. "Did you think about what we discussed?" she demanded. I took a deep breath. "Yes, and I've made my decision. The money is staying with me for college, like Grandpa intended." Her face darkened. "This isn't up for debate. Your father and I have decided." "I'm 18, I pointed out. "Legally an adult. The money was given to me, not you." "Don't you dare take that tone with me," she snapped. "We are your parents. We know what's best." "What's best for who?" I asked quietly. "For me, or for her?" I nodded toward my sister, who had appeared in the doorway. My mom didn't answer directly. Instead, she said, "Your sister has opportunities that you simply don't. It would be a waste to spend all that money on your education when she could really use it to advance her talents." "So my future doesn't matter?" I asked, feeling hurt but also increasingly angry. "Of course it matters," my mom said, in that condescending tone she uses when she thinks I'm being dramatic. "But let's be realistic about your prospects." That stung. I'd always been a good student. Not valedictorian material, but solid B's and A's. I'd already been accepted to decent colleges. What did she mean? My prospects? The argument escalated from there. My dad came home and joined in, both of them insisting I had no choice in the matter. My sister stood by, occasionally throwing in a comment about how selfish I was being. I didn't tell them about the bank account. Instead, I said I needed more time to think about it. They reluctantly agreed, though my dad made it clear he expected an answer soon. Over the next few days, the tension in the house was unbearable. My parents alternated between guilt-tripping me, "After all we've done for you," and making veiled threats about my future support. "Don't expect us to help you if you make this mistake." One night, I overheard them talking in their bedroom. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but their voices carried. "She's being completely unreasonable," my mom was saying. "I know," my dad replied. "But once we get that money, we can finally pay off the credit cards and maybe even put a down payment on a vacation home. God knows we deserve it after raising these kids." I froze. So that's what this was about. They weren't even planning to use the money for my sister's special talents. They wanted it for themselves. I felt sick, and more determined than ever to protect my future. The next morning, I called Grandpa and asked if I could come over. I needed to talk to someone who was actually on my side. "What's wrong, kiddo?" he asked as soon as I walked in. "You look like you haven't slept in days." I broke down and told him everything. How my parents demanded I give the money to my sister, the arguments, and what I'd overheard about their real plans for the money. Grandpa's face went from shocked to angry as I talked. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "I never meant to cause problems for you. But you did the right thing protecting that money. It was a gift to you, for your education. Not for your sister, and certainly not for your parents to spend on themselves." "What should I do?" I asked. "They're not going to let this go." He thought for a moment, then said, "You need to stand your ground. The money is legally yours, and it's in a secure account now. They can't touch it." But I know that doesn't solve the problem of living with them. They're making my life miserable, I admitted. Would you consider moving in with me until college starts? He offered. I've got plenty of space. I was tempted, really tempted. But I worried about escalating the situation even further. Let me think about it, I said. When I got home, my parents were waiting for me. The look on their faces told me they knew exactly where I'd been. You went crying to your grandpa? My dad said, his voice dangerously quiet. I needed advice, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. This is a family matter, my mom hissed. You had no right to involve him. He's family too, I pointed out. And he's the one who gave me the money. For the last time, my dad said, his face reddening. You will transfer that money to your sister, tomorrow. No more excuses. I took a deep breath. It was time to come clean. I can't, I said. What do you mean, you can't? My mom demanded. The money is already in a special account, I explained. It can only be used for educational expenses. My educational expenses. I've already set it up. There was a moment of stunned silence, and then all hell broke loose. My parents started yelling. My sister started crying dramatically about how I'd ruined everything, and I just stood there, letting the storm rage around me. You can yell all you want, I said when they finally paused for breath. It doesn't change the facts. The money is mine, legally. It's in an account that can only be used for education. And that's how it's staying. My dad looked like he wanted to hit something. My mom was practically vibrating with anger. Get out, she finally said. If you're going to be this selfish, this ungrateful, then get out of our house. I'd been expecting this, but it still hurt. Fine, I said. I'll stay with Grandpa until college starts. I packed a bag with essentials, planning to come back for the rest of my things when they weren't home. As I was leaving, my sister appeared in my doorway. You're such a jerk, she said. But I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. Now Mom and Dad are super mad. They're mad because they can't steal my college fund, I replied, zipping up my bag. Not because of anything I did wrong. It's not stealing if it's for family, she argued. But she didn't sound convinced. Ask them what they were really planning to do with the money, I suggested. Because it wasn't for your dance camp or art school. I left her standing there, looking confused. Maybe she'd figure it out, maybe she wouldn't. Either way, I was done being the family doormat. Grandpa welcomed me with open arms, and for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again. The next morning, he helped me retrieve the rest of my things from my parents' house while they were at work. I'm sorry it came to this, he said as we drove back to his place, but I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. Thanks, Grandpa, I said, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. For everything, the next few weeks were surprisingly peaceful. I started preparing for college, ordering textbooks and supplies with some of the interest from my account. Grandpa even helped me shop for dorm essentials. My parents tried calling a few times, but their messages were just more guilt trips and demands, so I stopped answering. My sister texted occasionally, mostly to complain about how I'd abandoned her, but sometimes just to chat about normal stuff. I think she was starting to see our parents' behavior in a new light. About 3 weeks after I moved in with Grandpa, my mom showed up unannounced. Grandpa was out running errands, so it was just me when I heard the doorbell. When I opened the door and saw her standing there, I almost closed it again. But something about her expression stopped me. She looked different, less angry, more desperate. Can we talk? She asked, her voice unusually subdued. I hesitated but finally stepped aside to let her in. We sat in Grandpa's living room, an awkward silence stretching between us. Your father and I have been talking, she finally said. We might have been too harsh. I didn't say anything, just waited. We miss you, she continued. The house feels empty without you. Your sister misses you too. Is that why you came? I asked. To tell me you miss me? She fidgeted with her purse strap. We were thinking maybe we could reach a compromise about the money. And there it was. I should have known this wasn't just about missing me. What kind of compromise? I asked, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. Maybe you could use half for college and give half to your sister, she suggested. As if this was incredibly generous. That would still give you plenty for education, and she could pursue her passions too. I took a deep breath. Mom, there is no compromise. The money is in an account specifically for educational expenses. My educational expenses. That's what Grandpa intended when he gave it to me. Her face hardened. You're being very stubborn about this. Very selfish. How is it selfish to use a gift for exactly what it was meant for? I asked. Because family helps family, she insisted. Your sister needs this opportunity, and I don't need an education, I countered. Besides, if this is really about my sister's opportunities, why did I overhear you and Dad talking about using the money to pay off credit cards and buy a vacation home? Her eyes widened slightly. She hadn't realized I knew about that. You misheard, she said quickly. We would never do that. I know what I heard, I said firmly. This isn't about my sister. It's about you and Dad wanting to get your hands on a large sum of money. She stood up abruptly. I can see this conversation is going nowhere. If you change your mind and decide to be a proper part of this family again, you know where to find us. After she left, I sat there fuming. A proper part of the family? As if that meant handing over my future to people who clearly didn't have my best interests at heart. The next day, I got an unexpected call from my sister. Mom came to see you? She asked without preamble. Yeah, I confirmed. Let me guess, she didn't tell you. No, my sister admitted. Dad mentioned it when they were arguing. That was interesting. They're arguing about me? About everything, she said, sounding tired. But yeah, mostly about you and the money. I asked them about what you said. About them wanting to use the money for credit cards and a vacation home, and? I prompted when she paused. They denied it at first, but then they started fighting with each other, and I think you might be right. Her voice was small. Dad said something about deserving a break after all these years of sacrifice, and Mom told him to shut up. I felt a mixture of vindication and sadness. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. I didn't want to be right about this. I didn't want you to be right either, she replied. I really thought they wanted the money for my dance camp and art school. We were both quiet for a moment. Are you really using all that money just for college? She finally asked. That's what it's for, I confirmed. Tuition, books, housing, meal plans. College is expensive, especially the school I got into. Even with scholarships, this barely covers 4 years. Oh, she said softly. I didn't realize it cost that much. For the first time, I felt like my sister was actually seeing my side of things. Maybe there was hope for our relationship after all. The next week brought another surprise visitor. My dad. Unlike my mom, he didn't bother with the pretense of missing me. He came with threats. Your mother might be willing to play nice, he said, pacing Grandpa's living room. But I'm done with the games. You have 2 choices. Transfer that money to a joint account with your sister's name on it, or we're cutting you off completely. No health insurance, no car insurance, no phone plan, nothing. I was stunned by the escalation. Are you serious right now? Completely, he said, his face hard. You think you're so grown up, making your own decisions? Fine. Be an adult. Pay your own way for everything. Part of me had been expecting something like this, but it still hurt to hear him say it so coldly. Grandpa already added me to his health insurance, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, and I've been saving up from my summer job to take over my phone bill. That seemed to throw him off balance. He'd expected his threats to work. You really think you've got it all figured out, don't you? He sneered. Wait until the real bills start coming in. You'll be begging us for help in no time. I'd rather take out student loans than come to you for anything, I said, surprised by my own bluntness. At least the banks are honest about wanting my money back. His face turned an alarming shade of red. You ungrateful little. After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me? I asked, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. You've always favored my sister. Always. And now you're trying to steal the one thing that's entirely mine. The one thing that was given specifically to me. We're your parents, he sputtered. We've clothed you, fed you, put a roof over your head. That's the bare minimum required by law, I pointed out. And now you're threatening to cut off a barely legal adult to try and extort money from them. Does that sound like good parenting to you? He didn't have an answer for that. Instead, he stormed out, slamming the door so hard that one of Grandpa's pictures fell off the wall. I was shaking when Grandpa got home. When I told him what happened, his face grew grim. I never thought my own son would stoop so low, he said quietly. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this. It's not your fault, I assured him. I'm glad you gave me the money directly. If you'd given it to them to hold for me, I'd never have seen a penny of it. He nodded, looking sad and tired. I know. That's exactly why I didn't. The next day, as promised, my phone stopped working. I went to the carrier store and got my own plan with a new number. Grandpa helped me navigate getting my own health and car insurance. It was scary taking on all these adult responsibilities at once, but also empowering. I was doing it, standing on my own 2 feet, even if I had Grandpa's support. My sister kept texting me on my new number, which I'd shared with her, keeping me updated on the situation at home. Apparently, my parents had told extended family that I'd stolen money meant for both of us and run away from home. Most relatives seemed to believe them, not bothering to get my side of the story. But then something unexpected happened. My aunt, my mom's sister, called me. "Your mom's version of events isn't adding up," she said. "What's really going on?" I told her everything, not holding back. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "I believe you," she finally said. "Your mom has always had issues with money and favoritism between kids. I've seen it, but never said anything because it wasn't my place." "Thank you for believing me," I said, feeling a weight lift. Having another adult take my side meant more than I could express. "I'll talk to the rest of the family," she promised. "Make sure they know the truth." True to her word, my aunt must have made some calls, because within days, more relatives were reaching out, offering support and apologizing for believing my parents' story without checking with me first. Not everyone, of course, but enough to make me feel less isolated. My parents must have realized their smear campaign was backfiring because they changed tactics again. This time, they had a lawyer send a formal letter to Grandpa's house, claiming that since I was their dependent when the gift was made, they had a legal right to oversee the funds until I was 21. Grandpa took one look at the letter and laughed. "This is nonsense," he said. "Pure intimidation tactics. The money was gifted to you directly. You're legally an adult, and it's already in an account that's legally yours. Their lawyer is either incompetent or deliberately misleading them." Still, to be safe, we consulted with a real attorney, who confirmed what Grandpa said. The lawyer wrote a response letter outlining the legal facts and suggesting that any further attempts to claim the money could be considered harassment. We didn't hear from my parents' lawyer again. As the summer wore on and college approached, my parents made one last desperate attempt. They showed up at Grandpa's house together, demanding to speak with both of us. Grandpa and I sat across from them in the living room, a united front. "We've been patient," my mom began, "but this has gone on long enough. We're your parents, and we are telling you that you need to share this money with your sister." "My answer hasn't changed," I said firmly. "The money is for my education, as Grandpa intended." "Fine," my dad snapped. "Then we'll go to the police. Report the money as stolen." Grandpa actually laughed at that. "Go ahead," he said. "Explain to the police how a legally documented gift from me to my grandchild, deposited in their own legal bank account, constitutes theft. I'm sure they'll be very interested in wasting their time on that." My parents exchanged glances. They'd clearly been counting on that threat working. "What about this?" my mom said, changing tactics. "We'll pay for your first year of college ourselves. All of it. In exchange, you give the money to your sister." "No," I said simply. "Why are you being so difficult?" My dad exploded. "It's just money." "If it's just money," I replied calmly, "why are you fighting so hard to take it from me?" That seemed to stun them into silence. "I think we're done here," Grandpa said, standing up. "My grandchild has made their decision. The money is theirs, legally and morally. It's time for you to accept that and move on." "This isn't over," my dad warned as they left. But it was. At least, the battle over the money was. The relationship damage was another story entirely. As moving day for college approached, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. The money had exposed my parents' true priorities in a way nothing else could have. It hurt, deeply, to know that they valued my sister's potential and their own desires over my education and future. But it also freed me from the guilt and obligation I'd always felt toward them. My sister came to see me the day before I left for college. She'd managed to convince our parents to drop her off at the mall, then took a bus to Grandpa's house. "I wanted to say goodbye," she said, awkwardly hovering in the doorway of the guest room where I'd been staying. "And to say I'm sorry." "For what?" I asked, surprised. She shrugged, looking younger than her 16 years. "For going along with Mom and Dad at first. For calling you selfish." I didn't understand what was really going on. "It's okay," I said, meaning it. "You were just believing what they told you." "Yeah. Well, I've learned not to do that anymore," she said with a wry smile. "Anyway, I wanted to give you this." She handed me a small wrapped package. Inside was a framed photo of the two of us from a few years back, arms around each other, genuinely smiling. before things got so complicated. So you don't forget your annoying little sister while you're off becoming a college genius, she said, trying to sound casual but not quite managing it. I hugged her, feeling a surge of protectiveness. I could never forget you. And hey, in 2 years when it's your turn to apply to colleges, I'll help you figure it all out. Scholarships, financial aid, everything. She hugged me back tightly. Thanks. I might need it. Mom and Dad haven't exactly been setting money aside for my education. That didn't surprise me, but it still made me angry on her behalf. We'll figure it out together, I promised. The next morning, Grandpa drove me to campus. As we unloaded my stuff in front of the dorm, he pulled me aside. I want you to know how proud I am of you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Not just for standing up for yourself, but for how you handled this whole situation. With dignity and maturity. I learned from the best, I said, giving him a hug. One more thing, he said, pulling an envelope from his pocket. I was going to wait until Christmas to tell you this, but now seems like the right time. Inside the envelope was a letter, stating that Grandpa had set up a similar educational fund for my sister, to be given to her directly when she turned 18. I always planned to do the same for both of you, he explained, but separately, when you each reached adulthood. Your parents didn't know about hers yet. I felt a wave of relief. My sister would have the same opportunity I had. She wouldn't have to depend on our parents for her future. Can I tell her? I asked. I think that would be best coming from you, Grandpa agreed with a smile. As I settled into my dorm that evening, unpacking my things and meeting my roommate, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in months. The battle with my parents had been painful, but I'd emerged stronger, more independent, and with a clearer understanding of my worth. I sent my sister a text, telling her about Grandpa's fund for her. Her reply was a string of shocked emojis followed by "Are you serious? This changes everything." I smiled, imagining her excitement and relief. It did change everything, not just for her future, but for our relationship too. We could be allies now, not competitors in our parents' toxic game of favorites. That night, as I lay in my new bed in my new room, thinking about the classes that would start in just a few days, I realized something important. I'd won. Not just in keeping the money that was rightfully mine, but in breaking free from the unhealthy family dynamic that had constrained me for so long. I fell asleep feeling lighter than I had in years, ready to start this new chapter of my life on my own terms. The first semester of college was everything I'd hoped for and more. I threw myself into my classes, joined a couple of clubs, and made new friends who knew nothing about my family drama. For the first time in my life, I was judged solely on my own merits, not in comparison to my sister. I called Grandpa at least once a week, and we'd chat about my classes, his garden, and everyday stuff. He never pushed me to reconcile with my parents, but I could tell he hoped the rift would heal eventually. My sister and I texted regularly. Now that she knew about her own future fund, she seemed more relaxed, less desperate for our parents' approval. She'd started researching colleges herself, planning ahead in a way that made me proud. As for my parents, I hadn't heard from them directly since moving day. Through my sister, I learned they were furious when they found out about Grandpa's plan to give her a similar fund when she turned 18. Apparently, they'd tried to convince him to give them control of it for safekeeping, but he'd refused point blank. It was almost Thanksgiving when my mom reached out again. Her text was brief. "We'd like you to come home for Thanksgiving. Families should be together for the holidays." No apology, no acknowledgement of everything that had happened. Just an expectation that I'd show up and play happy family. I discussed it with Grandpa. "It's entirely your decision," he said. "You don't owe them your presence. But if you want to try and mend fences, I understand that too." After thinking it over, I decided to go. Not because I'd forgiven them, but because I wanted to see my sister, and because I felt strong enough now to face them without being manipulated. When I arrived at my parents' house on Thanksgiving morning, the atmosphere was tense. My mom greeted me with a stiff hug, my dad with just a nod. My sister, on the other hand, practically tackled me in the hallway. "Thank God you're here," she whispered. "It's been so awkward." Dinner was a masterclass in passive-aggressive conversation. My parents asked surface-level questions about college, carefully avoiding any mention of how it was being paid for. I answered politely but briefly, not giving them any openings to start an argument. It wasn't until dessert that things finally came to a head. "So," my dad said, setting down his fork, "I think it's time we cleared the air about what happened this summer." I braced myself. "Okay, Your mother and I have discussed it, he continued, as if bestowing a great gift, and we're willing to put it behind us. Water under the bridge. I waited for more. An apology, maybe. An acknowledgement that they'd been wrong. But there was nothing. That's it? I finally asked. You're willing to forget how you tried to take my college fund? How you kicked me out and cut me off financially? Don't be dramatic, my mom said with a dismissive wave. We were upset. These things happen in families. I looked at them, really looked at them, and realized something. They weren't capable of seeing what they'd done wrong. In their minds, they were the parents. They were always right. And any conflict was the fault of their ungrateful child. I'm not looking to rehash everything, I said carefully. But I need you to understand that things can't just go back to how they were before. You broke my trust. You chose my sister over me, repeatedly, and then tried to take something that was specifically given to me. Here we go again, my dad muttered. The victim act. It's not an act, I said, keeping my voice level. It's how I feel, and until you can acknowledge that your actions hurt me, we can't move forward. We are your parents, my mom said, as if that explained everything. Everything we do is for your own good. I almost laughed. How exactly was trying to take my college fund for my own good? We were teaching you about family responsibility, my dad said. About sharing? No, I countered. You were teaching me that my needs and future don't matter as much as what you want. That's not a lesson I'm willing to learn. The conversation devolved from there. My parents refused to admit any wrongdoing, instead painting themselves as the victims of my selfishness and stubbornness. My sister tried to mediate but eventually gave up and retreated to the kitchen. I finally stood up, tired of going in circles. I think I should go. This clearly isn't productive. If you walk out that door, my dad warned, don't bother coming back for Christmas. I looked at him sadly. That's your choice. My door is always open if you ever want to have a real conversation about what happened. One where you actually listen instead of just waiting for your turn to speak. I found my sister in the kitchen, eating leftover pie directly from the tin. I'm heading out, I told her. This isn't working. She nodded, looking resigned. I figured. They haven't changed at all. I'm sorry to leave you with them, I said, genuinely feeling guilty. She shrugged. It's only a year and a half until I'm 18. I can handle it, especially now that I know I have options for college. I hugged her tight. You can always call me, anytime. I know, she said. Oh, and can you tell Grandpa thanks again? For, thinking of me too. I promised I would and slipped out without saying goodbye to my parents. The drive back to Grandpa's was long and quiet, giving me plenty of time to think. By the time I arrived, I'd made peace with the situation. My parents weren't going to change. They weren't suddenly going to see things from my perspective or admit they were wrong. And that was okay. I didn't need their approval or understanding anymore. Grandpa was waiting up, despite the late hour. One look at my face told him everything he needed to know. Hot chocolate? He offered. I nodded gratefully, and we sat in comfortable silence while he prepared it. They're not going to change, are they? I finally asked. He sighed deeply. People can change, but only if they want to. Only if they can recognize there's something that needs changing in the first place. And they don't see it, I concluded. No, he agreed. They don't. I spent the rest of Thanksgiving break with Grandpa, helping him put up Christmas decorations early and watching old movies. It wasn't the holiday I'd imagined, but it was peaceful, which was more than I could say for any holiday with my parents. When I returned to campus, I threw myself back into my studies with renewed focus. If my parents couldn't appreciate the opportunity I'd been given, I was determined to make the most of it myself. Time passed quickly. Christmas came and went, spent with Grandpa, as my parents had made good on their threat to uninvite me. Spring semester started. My sister turned 17, 1 year closer to her own freedom. It was in April, nearly a year after the whole mess had started, that something unexpected happened. My aunt called. Your mom's in the hospital, she said without preamble. She had a gallbladder attack. They're doing surgery tomorrow. My first instinct was concern, quickly followed by uncertainty. Given how things had been left, would my mom even want me there? Should I come? I asked my aunt. She hesitated. I think it would mean a lot to her. Despite everything, you're still her child. After talking it over with Grandpa, I decided to go. Not out of obligation, but because it was the right thing to do. Because regardless of our issues, I didn't want to be the kind of person who ignored a family member in the hospital. When I arrived at the hospital the next morning, My dad was in the waiting room. He looked tired, older somehow. When he saw me, a complicated mix of emotions crossed his face. "You came," he said, sounding surprised. "Of course," I replied. "She's still my mom." We sat in awkward silence for a while before he spoke again. "The doctors say it's routine. She should be fine." I nodded, relieved. "Good." More silence. Then, unexpectedly, he said, "I'm sorry." I turned to look at him, not sure I'd heard correctly. "What?" He stared down at his hands. "I said I'm sorry for how everything went down last summer. With the money. It wasn't right." I was so shocked I couldn't speak for a moment. My dad never apologized. Ever. "What brought this on?" I finally asked. He sighed heavily. "Your mom and I have been fighting a lot since you left. About money, about how we treated you, about everything. And then last week, your grandpa had a talk with me. A real talk, man to man." I couldn't imagine that conversation. My easygoing grandpa confronting his stubborn son. "What did he say?" I asked, genuinely curious. He reminded me that parents are supposed to want better for their children, not take from them. That we'd failed in our most basic duty by trying to steal your future to fix our mistakes. My dad's voice cracked slightly. He was right. "So mom feels the same way?" I asked cautiously. "She's getting there," he admitted. "It's harder for her to admit when she's wrong. But almost losing you completely. It's made us both think." I nodded slowly, processing this unexpected development. "I appreciate the apology. I really do. But it's going to take time to rebuild trust." "I understand," he said. "We don't deserve your forgiveness right away, but we'd like a chance to earn it back." When my mom came out of surgery, I was there. She was groggy from the anesthesia, but her eyes widened when she saw me. "You came," she mumbled, echoing my dad's earlier surprise. "Yeah," I said, taking her hand. "I came." Over the next few months, we started the slow process of repairing our relationship. There were more conversations, more apologies. They went to family therapy, both with and without me. It wasn't easy, and there were setbacks, but slowly, things improved. My sister later told me that after I left at Thanksgiving, she'd finally stood up to them too, telling them exactly how their behavior had affected both of us. It had been the beginning of their realization that they might lose both their children if they didn't change. By the time summer rolled around, things were different. Not perfect, but better. My parents had started taking real steps to address their financial issues. My dad cutting up their credit cards and my mom working with a financial planner to create a budget they could actually stick to. They'd even started a small college fund for my sister to supplement what Grandpa would be giving her. I spent half the summer with Grandpa and half with my parents. There were still awkward moments, still times when old patterns threatened to resurface, but we were all trying. That counted for something. When my sister turned 18 the following year, Grandpa presented her with her own check and letter, just as he had for me. My parents, true to their word about changing, didn't try to interfere. Instead, they helped her research the best ways to secure the money for her education, sometimes even asking me for advice based on my experience. Looking back now from the perspective of someone about to graduate college, I can see that the whole money situation was both a terrible crisis and an important turning point for our family. It exposed the unhealthy dynamics that had been simmering for years, and forced all of us to make choices about what kind of family we wanted to be. I'm proud of how I handled it, proud that I stood up for myself when it would have been easier to give in, proud that I protected my future while still leaving the door open for reconciliation. And I'm endlessly grateful to Grandpa, not just for the financial gift that made my education possible, but for his unwavering support and wisdom throughout the whole ordeal. He showed me what real family love looks like, the kind that empowers rather than controls. As for the money itself, it's almost all gone now, spent exactly as Grandpa intended, on tuition, books, housing, and all the other expenses that come with higher education. But what I gained from standing my ground is worth far more than $100,000. I gained self-respect, independence, and the knowledge that I can face difficult situations with integrity and come out stronger on the other side. That's the kind of education money can't buy. Update. 5 years later. Wow, I didn't expect this post to get so much attention. Thanks for all the supportive comments and messages. A lot of you asked for an update, so here it is. It's been 5 years since everything went down with my parents and the college fund. A lot has changed, mostly for the better. I graduated college with honors and immediately landed a job in my field. Nothing fancy, entry-level stuff, but it's in an industry I love and has good growth potential. I've been there for about a year now and already got my first promotion. My sister is now in her third year of college. She went to a different school than I did, studying something completely different, which I think has been good for her. She's really coming into her own, finding her own path instead of living in anyone's shadow. We're closer than ever now. We text almost daily and try to meet up at least once a month, just the two of us. Grandpa is doing great, still living independently and keeping busy with his garden and volunteer work. He's slowed down a bit, but his mind is as sharp as ever. I try to visit him at least twice a month. Those visits are sacred to me, and I've never missed one unless I was genuinely sick or out of town. As for my parents, well, that's more complicated. The short version is that we have a relationship, but it's very different from before. After my mom's health scare and the subsequent apologies, they did make an effort to change. They went to therapy consistently for about 2 years and made real progress in understanding the damage their favoritism and financial irresponsibility had caused. Our relationship now is what therapists would probably call cordial with boundaries. We see each other for major holidays and occasional family dinners. We chat on the phone maybe once every couple of weeks. It's polite, sometimes even warm, but never quite as close as I think they'd like it to be. The truth is, while I've forgiven them, I haven't forgotten, and I'm much more careful about what I share with them, what aspects of my life I allow them to be involved in. Some people might see that as sad, but I see it as healthy. I'm protecting myself while still maintaining a connection. There have been a few bumps in the road. Last year, my dad lost his job and they hit a rough patch financially. For a brief, tense moment, I thought they might ask me for money, which would have been a major setback in our healing process. But they didn't. Instead, they downsized their house, sold one of their cars, and my mom picked up extra shifts at work. They handled it themselves, like adults, which honestly impressed me. My sister still struggles with them sometimes. Old habits die hard, and they occasionally slip back into treating her as the favorite, especially when they're stressed. But she's gotten much better at calling them out on it, and they've gotten better at recognizing it and correcting course. Grandpa continues to be the steady, loving presence he's always been. He never gloats about being right, never says I told you so to my parents. He just keeps loving all of us, while still holding firm boundaries when necessary. I hope I can be half the person he is when I reach his age. One of the most unexpected outcomes of this whole saga is how it's shaped my approach to money and relationships. I'm incredibly careful about financial boundaries now. I don't lend money to friends unless I'm okay with never seeing it again. I keep separate accounts from my partner, even though we split expenses fairly, and I've been saving aggressively for my own future, including a house down payment and retirement. Some people might call that paranoid, but I see it as a valuable lesson learned. Money has the power to reveal people's true priorities and values. It's better to be clear and cautious from the beginning than to be blindsided later. As for the educational trust account that started all this drama, it served its purpose perfectly. I graduated without student loan debt, which has given me a huge advantage starting out in adult life. The money is gone now, spent exactly as Grandpa intended, but the freedom it provided will benefit me for decades to come. Looking back, I'm grateful for how things turned out, even though the journey was painful. If my parents had never revealed their true colors over that money, I might still be stuck in unhealthy family dynamics, never setting proper boundaries, always feeling less valued than my sister. Sometimes it takes a crisis to catalyze necessary change. To anyone going through something similar, stand your ground, know your worth, and remember that family is supposed to lift you up, not tear you down. Sometimes the family we choose, or who choose us, like my grandpa, can be more supportive than the family we're born into. Thanks again for all the support, Reddit. It meant more than you know during a really difficult time. Edit. A lot of people are asking about what happened with my parents' attempt to access my sister's college fund when she turned 18. They actually didn't try to get control of it. By the time my sister turned 18, they had been in therapy for over a year and had made real progress. When Grandpa gave her the check, they congratulated her and even helped her research the best ways to secure it for education. It was a huge sign of growth on their part, and it really helped rebuild some trust. Edit 2. Someone asked what I studied in college. I got a degree in computer science with a minor in business. The job market in this field is pretty good right now, which I'm thankful for. Edit 3. Yes, Grandpa knows about this post. He doesn't really get Reddit, but I showed him some of your comments, and he got a kick out of being the hero of the story. He says thank you for all the kind words.